Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Oh, you know what time it is? Lock Shop time, folks. What is up? Welcome to the program. Huss with you. And look who's back in the Lock Shop. My guy, Matthew Iwanyk. Matty, what's up? How are you?
I'm good. It's because Dusty wasn't traveling enough in September, October and stuff. I didn't get to do the Lock Shop with you enough throughout that time, especially to talk some Canadian Football League. So it's great being back on with you, Huss. I love being on with Jake or Patty as well, but been a while since I've had some Huss time, so I'm loving this.
Hey, listen, this is going to be fun. This is actually an absolutely perfect day to have you on because we'll get to the CFL. We'll get to the CFL East and West Final on the weekend. We'll talk some NFL, but it is also election day down south. And listen, I am not really into the politics. However, I have been following the line on Coolbet on the election, basically tracking this thing for the better part of the last 3 months. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on what is up right now. And just to note, like there was at one point in last election where Biden was plus 300 live and ended up winning. And I don't need to remind anybody what happened in 2016. I can remember seeing Donald Trump, and this is a good hour plus. Some of the results coming in, and he was still plus 600, plus 700, and then obviously at a certain point it changed. So there's some interesting numbers. We will get to all of that coming up, but let's start off with Monday Night Football. And by the way, trade deadline as well, kind of a big deal right away. Marshawn Lattimore just traded to the Commanders. Looks like kind of a second-day draft pick coming in. Saints shutting it all down, but
and the Lions going out and getting Zadarius Smith to replace Hutchinson.
That is, listen, they knew that they needed to do something. We'd heard potentially Myles Garrett. That was the dream, but Zadarius Smith. I mean, listen, a really nice ad. So we'll stay on top of it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another deal or two while we're on the air today. We'll pay attention to that. Hey, just before we actually get to Monday Night Football, I got to give a shout out to Jen in the chat. Jen came through last night, although they had to sweat it out, I think, with that game going to overtime. Had 12 of a 13-game parlay going into Monday Night Football, needed the Chiefs. So, Jen, well done. That is that's one of the wins of the year. That'll be up, potentially SD worthy.
That's something we need to keep track of.
13-game
the
parlay.
bets of the year.
Yes. Well, right now I can tell you, Jen Cool is now a nominee, as is Trevor Savage.
Yes.
And the Savage, we're hearing that money may go to an engagement ring for someone that he met at an EST event as well. So there could be a whole series of awards based on what's happened with Savage the plumber. But Jen, great work on that one. And hey, you got to love it. I believe favorites went 13-1 in the week in the National Football League. So there was a lot of chalk. I mean, pretty much every teaser covered. The lone favorite to lose, the Saints losing to the Panthers. That, of course, cost Dennis Allen his job. But a lot of people running the table in the weekly office pool, I think, with the amount of favorites that came in this weekend.
Yeah, and that's always tough to do because, like, often when I feel like I've ever filled office pools, you don't want to just keep taking favorites. You're like, well, they're not all going to win. It's like that test where the teacher makes all the answers C, and as you're filling it out, you're like, it can't be C again. I'm just going to pick a different one just because the teacher can't really be doing this. But credit on you if you decided to go with the favorites and you got it right outside of the Saints. But, like, it's funny the Saints season, though, because they go win those first 2 games of the year. And everyone, like, the talk was, are they the best team in the National Football League? Or are they right at the top? Look at this team. And then everything that's happened since, which is ending with a loss to the lowly Panthers and Dennis Allen getting fired. Just a little bit of a wild swing for the New Orleans Saints there.
7 long weeks since they pounded the Cowboys in Dallas, and everyone thought, whoa, Saints, could this be their year? They're hosting the Super Bowl. The answer is a resounding no. It is definitely not their year. They're blowing it up right now. And, one of the things that we'll talk about relatively soon, I'm going to get the fellas to see if they can get it up at CoolBet in the futures section, is who will get the number 1 pick in the draft. It seems like a quarter of the league right now is sitting on 2 wins.
Oh, jeez.
It's a huge, and I mean, listen, their strength of schedule is going to come into that, as well as, what's left of some teams after today's trade deadline. So I would imagine tomorrow or Thursday we'll have that, and that'll be a fun little conversation to follow over the course of the next few months of the NFL season. For the teams that will not be competing for the Lombardi Trophy, but will in fact be competing for the number 1 overall pick.
Just quickly to the Saints. Their cap space for next year, I saw.
It's
minus $81 million.
It's
so much dead cap. They're minus $81 million for next year with their cap. So things are looking up in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think like 60 of that is Carr. It's guaranteed. There's no way that they can get around it. So he's going to probably be with the club for 1 more year at least. There'll be a new coach, and we'll see if they get a high pick. Maybe they get a young quarterback on a rookie deal and can work him in. But I think it's going to be a little while before we see the Saints contending again. Pretty fun Monday nighter last night. Mahomes was slinging it. DeAndre Hopkins, not washed, Matt. But I got to give Baker Mayfield and Tampa a lot of credit for hanging in that game, coming back the way they did. And I'll be honest, I kind of felt sorry for Baker because I think their coaching staff completely blew it at the end, taking that timeout as early as they did, essentially guaranteeing Mahomes would have some time regardless of what happened. And then how do you not go for 2 there, knowing what's on the other side of this field that's going to be getting the football? I mean, as a Chiefs guy, I'm sitting there, and when I saw them throw at the kicker, I'm like, oh, thank God. This is great because, I mean, they had the opportunity to go up with 30 seconds left, and there's no guarantee, even though Mahomes is maybe as close to a sure thing to come back into it. But I thought Todd Bowles really just fumbled an incredible opportunity for his football team.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are right now saying you go for the 2. I said it on the morning show. I would like to believe I would have went for 2, but I do think there's a different thing once you're in the position and you have the head coach and the lights on you and the headset's on. I think most head coaches still just kick that single because they'll sit there. I believe in my defense. I believe that we're going to go get that stop. And I think a lot of people, if they're in that spot, the bright lights might get to you because we just don't see enough people be a little more, aggressive. But you're right. Like, why everyone else would want to go for 2 is like almost what do you have to lose in this situation? You've gotten to this point. You've been hot as an offense. Why not just finish it off or attempt to finish it off? But I do know that if it doesn't work, how frustrating that could be. As a Ravens fan, John Harbaugh has done that quite a bit over the last number of years where he goes for those 2 points. And they've lost some games because of that late. And you afterwards, as a fan, you kind of sit hindsight 2020. Why didn't you just go to overtime? Why? You got Lamar, I understand why Todd Bowles ultimately didn't do it. So I'm not going for the 2, but it hurts. That's rough if you're a Bucks fan and you think you got the Chiefs that close. Now, for you, though, as a Chiefs fan, like how much did your heart stop when you saw Mahomes go down?
Oh, my God. One of the guys beside me goes, welcome to the Carson Wentz era. And I almost came over the table at him. And luckily, he was back. He was running around. He was still Mahomes. But yes, I did fear for a moment that this entire season had just gone up in flames because, with all due respect to Carson Wentz, he's no Patrick Mahomes. And things change significantly if 15 isn't out there. Was a really interesting game. I mean, offensively, and I know there's been so much talk about the Chiefs just doing enough to win. I think you could basically say that last night because, I mean, of course, they did win an OT, but for like people that were wondering, oh, what's up with Travis Kelce early in the year? He's just kind of rounding into form, getting ready for the playoffs. 14 catches last night for 100 yards. And early returns from this DeAndre Hopkins trade are looking very, very good. Mahomes was so good. At one point, he was 11 of 11 passing on third down last night, Matt. And Hopkins now is a weapon that is so reliable with those hands. You know, you've got, it seemed like on a number of occasions, especially in the red zone, they'd have Kelsey drawing so much attention under the on the short crossing route. And then D-Hop gets into the back, and you just got to account for all of those guys, and Mahomes is going to find a guy. But 2 touchdowns for Hopkins. And by the way, Hopkins, easy money going over the total of the yards in the first half, helping us cash that lock shot partner parlay yesterday with Kate Otten in the over. But I got to say, I'm pretty optimistic about where this offense is right now with the help of Hopkins, knowing Pacheco's coming back, and the incredible renaissance of Kareem Hunt back in the backfield, going over 100 as well yesterday.
This is terrifying for the rest of the National Football League, because last year at this point, there was concerns about the Chiefs. Are they a little bit done? Are they on the downturn? Because they had a few losses. And then they turned it on in the playoffs, did what they needed to, and they ultimately were Super Bowl champions. You know, they go on the road and go get it done in the playoffs. They are now the new Patriots in the sense of the regular season doesn't matter to them. It's not about firing perfectly on all cylinders through October and November. It's about being ready to go in January and winning those last few football games that you need to go win a Super Bowl. That's what they're doing. Like it's almost like they're just going through the motions to a degree when they go on the football field. They're just getting it done. I'll say I don't think we've seen the Chiefs at their utter best. There's a lot higher that they can go. They're doing what they need to just go get the victories. They're doing what they need to go get the wins. And what's scary is that even in that, they haven't found that stumble. They haven't found that one spot on the card where they got caught and they have that loss. That, like, as of this week, and I'm starting to look, I looked at their schedule to go, okay, is 18-0 on the table here? It would be 18, or no, 17-0. Is 17-0, like, where are the tough matchups for the Chiefs? Or are we looking at this team that might be going off? And, like, there's a couple weeks from now, you got the Bills. There will be the Texans. There is the Steelers. But beyond that, this is a team that I think is good enough to, like, with the other games, that they just going through the motions is enough for them. They could just go you have to be at your utter best. You can't make mistakes against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs will beat you. And what's scary, again, as I said, is, though, once they get to the playoffs, we're then going to see the real Chiefs. And who's going to be able to stop them? Like, are the Ravens a team that are going to be able to stop them? You can't bet on it right now based on the history of the two teams. Over on the NFC, if we get the top 2 teams of the conferences meeting, can the Detroit Lions take down these Chiefs? They did it on Monday night or opener last year, but are they good enough this year? Like, the Chiefs are just so scary right now, because it just seems that they could just put an average effort out there, and they're still going to go win those football games. This is absolutely incredible to watch.
I'm looking at the schedule, and I'll be honest. You know what? I do worry a little bit about this game next week at home against the Broncos. You know, we've seen the Chiefs in the past kind of, well, I mean, listen, the last time they lost was at Arrowhead on Christmas Day to the Raiders. I mean, sometimes these divisional games are a lot closer than people sort of think or expect. I know that Sean Payton is going to have his team ready to go. And the Denver Broncos do have a pretty darn good defense, although they were exposed big time by the Ravens on the weekend. I mean, I think if anyone had thought, you know, kind of saw who Denver had beaten, okay, well, this is a big test, and honestly, they didn't pass it. But this is not a walkover for Kansas City playing on the short week at home against Denver. I mean, to me, if you look at the schedule, the game, this is a game I would have loved to have gone to. Unfortunately, it's Grey Cup Sunday. The Chiefs in Buffalo to take on the Bills in Week 11. Then you got Carolina. You're home to the Raiders, home to the Chargers, at Cleveland, home to the Texans on Saturday night. And then maybe the toughest spot is that incredibly short turnaround between the game on Saturday, December 21st, and then a trip to Pittsburgh on Christmas Day on Wednesday.
3 days
essentially off. It's basically like playing on Sunday and then having the Thursday nighter. So that's going to be a real tough spot. Pittsburgh's playing well. They've got a great defense, and then you're at Denver. But it's entirely possible that they win out. I mean, I don't think that'll be their focus, to your point. I mean, I think they're just looking to win games, get ready, get that number 1 seed, make sure you've got the bye in the first week, and maybe most important, because I really see three teams in the AFC that are truly capable of winning the AFC and getting through. It's the Chiefs, it's the Ravens, it's the Bills.
Not the Texans?
No, I think the Texans, I mean, maybe I'm just rattled at how bad they were against the Jets on Thursday night. But it seems that if they don't have Nico Collins, and he should come back at some point, with Diggs being out for the year, I'm just not sure they've got the weapons, and I don't think they've got the defense on the level of those other teams as well right now. So, I could be wrong on Houston, but to me, I think there's a big gap between those three teams. And what I'm getting at is, if you're the 1 seed, there's a good chance that, assuming teams beat the teams below them, you get to sit back and watch Buffalo and Baltimore beat the hell out of each other in that divisional round of the playoffs before going to the championship game, if you can get it done. So the 1 seed is huge. Ever since they went to the 7 playoff teams, winning your conference and getting that bye, incredibly, incredibly important. So anyways, that's the latest on the NFL. We'll get to some hockey in a minute and check out the games tonight. We got a WST parlay, and we'll put something together for the people. But Maddie, let's talk a little Canadian Football League. What did you think of the Riders-Lions game on the weekend? And was that as you thought things would go, with the Riders winning somewhat comfortably, but still a more competitive BC team than when they went there a couple of weeks ago?
Truthfully, I didn't know what to make of the West. I still, largely to a degree, don't, because I thought all three teams had an argument to be made that they can go represent the West into the Grey Cup game. With VA, what we saw in the last game when he took over the Lions, like, it was back to being the Lions from the early part of the season. And I thought that was this fear that you would have. But the Riders have a very good defense. I'm not stunned that the Riders found a way to win. I'm actually a little more surprised how almost convincing it was. But, like, if Sean White hits a couple of the field goals and stuff and the extra points, it is an entirely different football game. I feel like the BC Lions shot themselves in the foot a little bit too much. Keon Hatcher really didn't step up. Their D couldn't get the stops late when they absolutely needed to. But then credit to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who just went about business and did what they needed to. And A.J. Ouellette, who really had... Now, I know he battled a lot of injuries throughout the season, but really wasn't the free agent signing that the Riders were looking for when he first got there. But he absolutely was that running back this past weekend. And they've got a great 1-2 punch, or a two-headed monster if they want to go with it, with Ouellette and then Rock Armstead. And then when you're home in Saskatchewan, and I know some people are going to be making, it wasn't as big of a crowd. It was still 26,000 people at that game, cheering for the Riders. And it is still going to be loud. And Lieutenant Eric and all of his green fans, they're going to be there celebrating and pushing that team on. So I'm not surprised the Riders won. I'm actually a little more surprised how tight it was. But now it sets up a very awesome matchup, I think, for a West Final when you have... Look, the Riders did beat the Bombers earlier this year, but then the Bombers took the 2, including a very convincing win on the rematch of the Labor Day set. But the Riders are now hot again. And one thing we know about the playoffs is, are you that hot team really can play well? And I'm not trying to say the Bombers aren't hot, but the Riders had that stretch where they just couldn't win a football game, and then since then they basically won every football game outside that last game of the season to the Stamps when it was over because the wind came in and helped the Bombers take the West. God wanted you guys to get the West, so he came in and gave you guys the West. And then so it wasn't anything. But the Riders are now playing hot football, and last I checked, I'll have to look right now, the weather doesn't seem to be like it's going to be a factor. That's 11 degrees and sunny on Saturday. I think that kind of favors Trevor Harris a little bit. I think that opens things up for a little bit for the Riders. So I think it's going to be a tight football game. And what I said a couple of weeks ago, without knowing where any of the positioning was the West, I said whoever wins the West semifinal is going to go to the Grey Cup.
The disrespect.
So I'm sticking with that.
Well, listen, I think the Riders are going to have some steam coming into this game. I mean, I had said, when at the end of the games on Saturday, once we had the matchup, was interested what people thought that the line would be. And I said I was expecting Bombers -3. I mean, basically 2 very even teams, and the Bombers have an impactful home field. They'll get the 3 points for that. I was sort of where I thought it opened at 4.5. but it didn't take long to come down to 3.5. And, the most lopsided game of the year between the two teams was the early game when the Riders won 19-9. It was sort of when the Bombers were struggling offensively, put it on the ground a few times. But the Bombers went in. I think it was a 2-point win in Regina on Labor Day, and like a 5-point win in the Banjo Bowl. So, the games have been really, really tight. And I'm with you. I think Saskatchewan is in a much better place. And the fact that they've made the playoffs and now won this playoff game, I don't want to say that they're playing with house money, but I think they're in a great spot. Like, if they do lose this game, we'll look back at the first year of Corey Mace as a huge success.
Yeah.
So, they've already accomplished a lot, but let's face it, there's nothing that they would love to do more than spoil the party in Winnipeg and book their ticket to the Grey Cup at the expense of the Bombers. Because if you look at the head-to-head matchups between these teams over the course of the last 4 or 5 seasons, it really has been all Winnipeg. I believe they're 11-2 in their last 13 matchups. And, that's even more reason for the Riders and their fans to be fired up. I saw Eric at that game, and I was wondering how many Rider fans were going to grab the remaining tickets for Princess Auto Stadium. It did not take long on the weekend for that game to be completely sold out. I think they were already well over 30,000, so it won't be like a Labor Day game or a Banjo Bowl, but I do think that there's going to be plenty of Rider fans coming in, and man, it's going to be a really, really fun matchup. Again, 3.5 right now is the number. The total's 48 right now. Bombers minus 217 on the money line, and the Riders, this has come down. I believe they opened at plus 188. They're now down to plus 175. Still a pretty attractive number, though, if you do think the Saskatchewan can win. We get Toronto and Montreal, though, Matt. Listen, credit to Ottawa. They kind of hung around. They looked better than they did at times in the second half of the year. But that was an all-around performance by the Toronto Argonauts. Their defense, their front seven dominated Winnipeg a few weeks ago when they played. That's the Bombers' lone loss in basically the second half of the season. And it seemed like Chad Kelly was really getting into a groove as the game went on. This is just a 2-point spread with Montreal as the favorite. To me, this is a big-time toss-up. I can see either team winning. But I think Toronto goes in, much like you said, who in the West semi could kind of carry that momentum in. The way they played in the second half, getting Chad Kelly back, the performance on the weekend, I think Toronto has a lot of steam heading into Montreal, looking to right the wrongs of last year where Montreal was in their position. And, of course, Chad Kelly had a historically bad game blowing up a 16-2 season.
Everything you say is exactly what I would say about the Argos, so I'll switch to the Owls here. The Owls are coming in actually quite cold in my eyes. Since Labor Day, they have 2 wins, and that's to Ottawa. Both of those were to Ottawa. They now you could maybe give them credit for how close it was against Winnipeg and the wind changing things, but they still lost that football game. And if you actually look at their 2 wins prior to Labor Day or Labor Day weekend, it was against Edmonton where Boris Beatty missed a kick, and it wasn't like the Elks really hurt themselves. And the week before that was when Brett Lawler missed all those kicks for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Alouettes started off really strong, and to me, they have faded in the second half. And they are not playing at a high level of football that Jason Moss would want this team playing as. And to me, I actually look at they might be a better team with Davis Alexander than Cody Fajardo.
He was good this year. There was no drop off.
I will say that next year, I think I've heard they're both under contract for next year. I'll say 2026, Davis Alexander is the starting quarterback in the Montreal Alouettes, and they'll move on from Cody Fajardo at the very least after next year. But I don't like how cold the Owls are coming into this game and how hot then the Argos are coming into this. And there is that redemption from last year that you just pointed out there. And for Chad Kelly, we could dislike him, things he did off the field, but on the field, he's a great quarterback. And he's going to want the redemption of what happened in the East Final last year. So I absolutely love the fact that they are the underdogs in this one. And on the money line, straight up money line plus 115, I absolutely love that for this weekend because I don't think it's a covering for the Argos. I think it's a win for the Argos in this one.
I'm with you as well, and I'm going to be getting on that plus 115 on the Argos. Never mind the point spread. This is a team that can go in and win this game, and really looking forward to seeing it. That's a 2:00 Winnipeg start, so 1:00 in Edmonton on Saturday. We got a hell of a day here too. Jets and Dallas Stars at 2 p.m. and then jumping on the rapid transit straight down to Princess Auto for the 5:30 kickoff between the Bombers and Riders. It's gonna be a marathon, I would say. But I can't wait. Hey, listen, while we're on the topic of the CFL, let me take advantage of having you on the program to quickly ask you about the Elks. Grey Cup week is big. We've heard that potentially we'll have a president. What are you hearing, and what's your take on when we, and most importantly, Edmonton fans, are going to find out who's running this team and get down to making some? Well, sorry, I mean coach, GM, like all of that. Like, or is it going to be the same guys coming back? Do you think?
I would be stunned. I'd be stunned if G-Roy and Jarius are back. Chris Morris did say that they'll be under consideration. Chris Morris also, I've never been at a presidential press conference before where it was that, it was very off the cuff. It was very personable. And I've covered a lot of press conferences in the city of Edmonton when it comes to hirings and firings of all sorts of positions.
What's this guy's background? I'm not that familiar with him.
Well, so Chris Morris, a longtime player on the Wall of Fame. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer in the Canadian Football League, 3-time Grey Cup champion. He actually, and I got to stop saying this because I've heard he maybe doesn't like the nickname, but Elfrid Payton gave him the nickname C Murder during his playing days because he was just that type of offensive lineman.
But during the time of the No Limit Soldiers, shout out to Master P.
But in the time while he was a player, he was also a teacher. And he also became a principal. He was coaching high school football in the city. And then he took over the University of Alberta Golden Bears football program. And has turned that program around in two ways. One where they have started becoming a team that can win some football games. But he is a teacher and an academic first. And the U of A has high standards for even athletics where they want to graduate players. And he was even asked at his press conference about, quote unquote, maybe some of the failures of the U of A. And he says, your failures are different than mine. He pointed out that, he had a 97% graduation rate, but he turned that program around. He brought money into the Golden Bears. He did a lot there that we hadn't seen with the Golden Bears program maybe ever. So he comes in, one as an alum, but also having done a lot in this community when it comes to football. He also then set a timeline of November 24th. He's hiring a GM. He has it. It's going to be, if it's not sooner, it's November 24th. He will have a general manager of the Edmonton Elks in place. As I said, Jarius G-Roy will get consideration. There's I forgot his last name, but Ryan out in BC was asked for permission according to pharmacology, as was Ed Hervey, who his contract's expiring soon with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Chris Morris and Ed Hervey played together, by all accounts, friends. And what I was told is back in their playing days were very tight. Ed Hervey was almost an honorary offensive lineman for that group. There's no lines for the Elks GM job. If I was setting them for cool bet, Ed Hervey would be the favorite to me as to being the next general manager of the Edmonton Elks. But we'll find out by the 24th. Maybe things change. Maybe Chris Morris has a conversation with someone that he thinks is going to be better. But once he gets the GM in place, he very much, it seems, believes in the organizational structure that he hired the GM will go hire the head coach, and the head coach will hire the rest of the staff. So no one asked him even about Trey Ford or anything like that because that's not his job as the president. That's up to the GM. Yeah. So by the 24th, a week after Grey Cup, we'll know at the latest, who the next general manager is of the Elks. And like I said, very likely maybe that it's a former general manager of the Edmonton Elks as the new general manager of the Edmonton Elks.
Well, and then we're going to find out what happens with all the important personnel. I mean, you mentioned Trey Ford. I'm fascinated as to where Vernon Adams ends up next year. We should maybe get a cool bet line on that because if they want a more established quarterback that's got a contract, he looked pretty good. I mean, I think if I'm a new head coach or new GM, new president, I'm not sure you could have a better guy that I think gives you the confidence going into game one of the season that you can make a significant turnaround in VA.
No, but there's a couple of considerations. As one is Trey is 5 years younger, so you get that. And two, there is the business element of this, and this fan base wants Trey. And I'm not saying they would be mad if you went with VA, but if you move on from Trey to win early and win quickly, and Trey becomes a star in this league somewhere else, most notably, I'm going to point out maybe Calgary. People
what
are
about Winnipeg?
Well.
He could come play with his brother. Zach Collaros has one more year.
If his brother doesn't go to the NFL.
Well, I guess that's true. That's true. But
like, okay, so I'm just with VA. Who would be like, who needs quarterbacks next year? Edmonton needs a quarterback. Calgary needs a quarterback. What's going to happen with Bo and Hamilton? Like, that's the one question I'm looking at there. I don't like if there was a starting job for Trey. I don't know why Trey would go to Winnipeg. If no one is offering a starting job and it's only backups, I don't know why you wouldn't go to Winnipeg, because clearly you're going to be the starter in 2026.
Absolutely. And I think, still have now, again, I know he hasn't wanted to play a unique role in the past, reportedly in Edmonton, but, the opportunity to play with his brother and really learn the offense for 1 year behind Zach Collaros, play whenever Zach isn't available. Who knows what happens during the season? Anything can change, but knowing that Zach is going to play one more year and that's going to be it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a very intriguing. We had that conversation on the show a little while ago, and we were talking about, what could happen. And of course, the Bombers aren't in the market for a new starter, but they have to start thinking about who carries the torch from the Collaros era going forward. And Trey Ford, especially with Tyrell here, is a pretty intriguing prospect. But listen, I think that you're exactly right. I mean, the careers are so short. If there is a starting spot available for Trey Ford, I think he goes for it. He gets the money and, goes out as week one of a starter. But it's a pretty limited list. And you've got Edmonton, Calgary for sure. You mentioned what's going on in Hamilton. The Bo's. I mean, Bo was just slinging it, though. I mean, I have a feeling he probably wants to, come back for another year.
Well, I think who had the report? Somebody had the report that it's going to be up to Scott Milanovic. Does he want him? And he benched Bo Levi at this point this season and went with Taylor Powell, and then he got hurt. It was an Elks game that he got hurt, and then was kind of stuck with Bo for the rest of the year. I don't think Bo's ready to be done. So if Hamilton says no to Bo, like, where does he go? Could there be a reunion in Calgary?
I mean, I kind of would have thought that it would have been unlikely, but the more you think about it, would certainly fire up, I think, a lot of longtime Stamps fans that have maybe been lapsed a little bit as they've kind of had this backward progression to afterthought come playoff time. And it would be a cool story, I mean, as far as coming full circle and finishing up. But it's very clear that he still has a lot to give. I mean, I know he threw a lot of picks and they didn't win enough games, but just from the quarterback perspective, I mean, led the league in most of the categories this year and was full marks for it.
It's going to be a fascinating offseason. Like, VA is the big one. Well, who's going to be in on VA? Where does VA go? And then seeing where all the dominoes fall and what happens with Trey. And it is going to be a fun offseason. But we still got 3 more football games left in the Canadian Football League, and I'm going to enjoy the hell out of those. By the way, Adam Schefter has a trade in the National Football League. The Steelers trading a 2025 fifth to the Jets for Mike Williams, wide receiver. So Mike Williams off to the Steelers, adding a little added weapon for the Steelers. Jets subtracting a weapon.
That's funny. I saw Big Maple. A-Rod just finally shipped out Mike Williams. LOL. Yes, he's Mike Williams was very, very unreliable for Aaron Rodgers. And the Steelers, who were rumored to be getting Brandon Ayuk all for the first few months of the season, didn't get it. At least now get someone to go along with George Pickens and add a little bit of oomph to the receiver room there in Pittsburgh, who has had this great start today, the great start to this season, but have a very, very tough schedule in the second half right now, looking to hang on in that spot. All right, let's go to the NHL for tonight. Have you been paying attention to what the Jets are doing these days, Matt?
I've heard that they've won a couple hockey games. They found a way to be a little bit successful this year.
They've been playing as well as we've ever seen them. And listen, I know I was like, oh, what about the playoffs? All that. I mean, hey, listen, we'll have that conversation later on. But, when you have those sort of failures, things can kind of go one way or the other. And, for the most part, the team is back. And it seems like there's a lot of guys on expiring contracts, UFAs, RFAs. It seems like they've still got a bad taste in their mouth from the Colorado series. And an identity of sort of proving people wrong night after night. It's clicking. I mean, they dominated Columbus in a way that I haven't seen a team do in the NHL for a long time. And then even on Sunday against Tampa, they give up a goal, which was a challenge for goalie interference. I don't know if you saw it, just an outrageous non-call. I mean, Connor Hellebuck's still pissed off about it. And then they score on the power play from the unsuccessful challenge. So you find yourself down 2-0 against a good team like Tampa, and then just put the pedal down and rolled them, putting up 7. The Jets have Utah tonight. The Utah Hockey Club, minus 213 on the money line for the Jets, plus 178. We do have a WST parlay up right now. It is actually, is this in the, I'll have to get to the exclusives here in a minute, but I'd be plus 350, Jets to win, Ehlers point, Perfetti point, and Josh Morrissey to get a point tonight. So that's our WST, and they've been winning. They've been cashing us a few tickets. Hopefully we can go back-to-back after doing the Lock Shop Partner Parlay last night. No Oilers tonight, but we do have a pretty busy slate of games. We'll just quickly run through these. Ottawa's in Buffalo. Buffalo, slight home dog, plus 101. Sens minus 119. Leafs and Bruins. No Austin Matthews tonight for Toronto. Leafs minus 125 faves at home. Calgary, a minus 143 favorite in Montreal. The Kraken are in Colorado. Colorado minus 178 favorite. The Canucks minus 238 in Anaheim. And the Lightning that we just saw here against the Blues, against the Jets, are in St. Louis to take on the Blues. Tampa minus 172, and then Pittsburgh at the Islanders. Islanders minus 130. Kings Wild. What a start for the Wild, by the way. 8-1-2. They've sort of quietly gone about their business, and they've been finding many different ways to win. But as the Jets have been on this run, I think people thought it would be Dallas, it would be Colorado. No, it's the Minnesota Wild that are right there nipping at their heels. And of course, we got a big game as well. The Flyers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Hurricanes, one of the other teams you'll see popping around at the top of NHL power polls at minus 303. Anything jump out at you on the slate tonight for the NHL?
Yeah, I was on the morning show doing the Cool Bet Hotline of the Day, and I was looking at that Bruins-Leafs game, and I hope Jake and Pat aren't listening right now, because what I saw was two teams that over the last 10 are generally playing rather similar. I think it was 5-4-1 and 5-5 were their two records respectively over the last 10. 4-4-2 for the Leafs, 4-5-1 for the Bruins. One team's lost 2 straight, though. One team's won 2 straight. And the team that's won 2 straight also beat the other team just a couple weeks ago. The Boston Bruins are coming in a little bit hotter. They're coming in with a couple more wins recently. And you just said there that Austin Matthews will not be in the lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And yet the Boston Bruins are the slight dogs at plus 105. And I think earlier today it was a little bit lower than that. So that's the thing. That was my hotline of the day, was jumping on the money line for the Boston Bruins against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And
Bruins, after getting lit up for 8 in that game against, I believe it was Carolina, back-to-back shutout.
Pasternak.
Yeah, so I mean, Monty's he's hitting a number of the buttons right now. Looking to see. All right, there's no way. The last time I took the Habs as an underdog, they gave up 8 goals to the Seattle Kraken. They're on the list. We will not be entertaining. We will not be entertaining the Habs tonight. Obviously, Vancouver is a big favorite at minus 238. I don't mind Tampa in this situation. I certainly think that Colorado probably is a good bet, although Seattle, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I don't like the Kings tonight. The Kings just played last night against the Preds. They got their victory. They're back to being dogs back-to-back nights against the Wild. We talked yesterday a little bit, Will and I, about the Oilers. That was kind of a scheduled loss against the Devils. The Devils had 2 days off, and then they were playing last night, and the Oilers came in off the back end to the back-to-back. Similar type thing. Kings just played last night. They're going to Minnesota to take on the Wild. Wild is the favorite, minus 175.
Yep.
I like that. I don't like the Kings in a back end of a back-to-back after having just beat the lowly Preds last night.
What about Colorado and Seattle? Do you like the Avs at home?
I haven't seen enough of either of these two teams to fully go there. Like, At some point, the Avs have got to get it going. At some point, the Avs have got to turn some things around.
They've lost 3 in a row, all by 5-2. Home to the Blackhawks, home to the Lightning.
The Kushin basket practice, does that do anything?
Well, I'm really interested to see how this goes because, I mean, he burned them twice. And you heard those interviews last year in the second round when this flared up again and he got the 6-month suspension. There were a lot of guys that had felt like he had sort of crossed them. I mean, listen, addiction, whatever it is, I mean, it's serious. But there was I think there will be some lasting effects in that locker room. Will be interesting, but the guy is so damn good when he's going. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, he was the best player in that Winnipeg, Colorado series, and it wasn't even close. And with all due respect to McKinnon and Makar and Rantanen, I was the Shushkin show, and that's why it was so devastating for them when they did lose. I kind of feel like it's time for them to get a win. I mean, they've been so streaky. They started off with 4 losses. They won 5 in a row, and now they've lost 3 again. They're 5-7 right now, 7th in the Central Division. So they're at home. I mean, if we wanted to put Colorado on the ticket, along with the Wild and Boston, we get it to plus 406. We'll probably get a nice boost past plus 450.
I like that.
See if there's I think Colorado at home for basically the same number is better than the Lightning on the road against St. Louis. I mean, I think it's sort of a toss-up on either side. Pittsburgh and the Islanders, I think, is a stay-away game. Obviously, the number's big on Carolina. So, yeah, we'll put the Boston in there. We'll put Minnesota. I'll throw in the Avalanche. We'll get it to plus 406. I'll text it over to Jake, and we will make that happen in the exclusives. All right, we got to talk about this election. It's going down right now.
Yeah.
Here's the latest odds. And again, this has been fluctuating quite a bit, but I think this is the biggest number I've seen on Trump at minus 175 to win since shortly after he got shot. At that point, it went from like minus 200 to like minus 286 at one point. And then it swung all the way back to at one point, Kamala was a very slight favorite. It has been seemingly, though, the last few days, Maddie, this going from minus 135 to 140. It's trending in Trump's direction here as far as the odds go. Are you surprised at that? Are you buying it? Or is this a great time to get in? Like, listen, I don't know what to believe. Like so many people, like there are some people that think that this is Kamala's going to get it.
Yeah.
Are we just staring at a great number at plus 150 for her to pull through?
I got on last week at plus 170 on Kamala. I got it as low as that. I will be jumping on one more time later today. The numbers are wrong. They've got the numbers wrong on this one. This is the bet, and I see where it comes from. Is the betting market has shown that this is going in Trump's favor, and there's some other sites that are showing that Trump's in the lead of Kamala. And I'm not. This is just about betting here, people. I'm not going to get into the politics of all of this.
No,
I'm just going to strictly break down of where these numbers are going right now. There was a big poll that came out on Saturday in Iowa from the best pollster in Iowa history. Like, she is amazing. She nails it almost every time. She had the switch to Trump in 2016. She had that Trump was closer to Biden than people were thinking in 2020. Everyone was waiting for this poll, and they were basing it on, okay, Trump won Iowa by 8 points, I think it was, or something in 2020. If it's 8 or higher, Trump's going to be in a great spot. If it's round 5, that's not good for Trump. It came in at Harris was in the lead of Iowa at plus 3. Now, I don't think Iowa is going to go for Harris ultimately in the end tonight. But if you go at this pollster's worst result, where she got it wrong, it was like an 8-point swing once. And it's like once, and more like almost every other time she nails it. If you go 8 points from Kamala plus 3, that's Trump plus 5. That's not good for Trump either. Because what that does is it illustrates that in the Midwest, especially in that belt area with Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania as those big swing states, that things are switching towards Kamala in this and not from Trump. And while some of the national polls have everything really tight, the women are coming out voting more than males. And that is also a big thing here. And they're going to be voting out more for the lefts and the Democrats as opposed to Trump. Where there was also the best pollster in Nevada yesterday predicted that she is going to take Nevada. Like if you deep dive into this, I don't think this is going to be close. And getting Kamala at plus money is to me just very easy right now. And like I said, I got in on it at plus 170 last week, plus 150 still right now. Like I think earlier yesterday or 2 days ago, it went all the way down to plus 115, I think, for her. So it's now gone back the other way. This is a time to jump on it. And like even if you look at the electoral college voting, because you could really go in on this, plus 350 for 300 and 329 electoral votes for Kamala Harris. I think it's going to be around like 319 or something like that. Like I like that number, even something like.
Well, if that's the case, then look at these states, because then there's going to be a good line in here somewhere. I mean, here's what's up right now. Arizona, Republicans minus 400, Democrats plus 300. Nevada, you just mentioned it. Republicans are a slight favorite, minus 125 to minus 105. Democrats minus 167 to win Wisconsin. Michigan, Dems minus 200. And Pennsylvania, another one of those big battleground states, has the Republicans at minus 167 and the Dems at plus 130. Any states that you think are going to go Dem that we should jump on here, Matt?
Stay away, Arizona. I think North Carolina makes the switch. I think Pennsylvania goes with the Democrats. I think that those plus money, those two there. Georgia will be very close.
Plus 180 for North Carolina and plus 175 for Georgia.
And then plus 130 for Pennsylvania. Like if you're looking to sprinkle tonight and looking for the Democrats, you think that Harris is going to win this? Those are the states that are like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin would be the three states. If she takes those, she wins the election. So if you think Harris is going to win, not only could like go for her plus 150, but like Michigan minus 200, not the case there, minus 167 for the Democrats. Flip side, like if you're thinking Trump's going to win this in the end, there's not a lot to bet on. I will say that right off the bat because he's not really favored in a lot of he's favored in a lot of spots. That there's not a lot of money to be had if Trump ultimately does go hold to this election. But if you think Kamala is going to win, which I really do think that it's going to happen, there's money to be had here tonight.
It's what, 270 to win? That's what they need?
You need 270, yeah.
The Trump over-under on electoral college votes is 283.5, plus 130 on the over, minus 167 on the under. So again, you know what I mean? If you're on the other side of this and think that Trump's going to win, you know, you've got it. And then there's a big one, popular vote margin of victory. I mean, for the popular vote, Kamala is a massive favorite at minus 370.
Because of California.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you know, the Dems going to own New York, California, like the biggest, most populous states outside of Texas. So anyways, if you're a political wonk, you can get on it right now. There's some state betting. There is the election winner at the end of the lock shop. Donald Trump minus 175, Kamala plus 150. Matt Iwanyk is in on Kamala, much like I am in on the Bombers for the weekend. You've got to pull for your team. Matty, great stuff. Thank you. Thanks for doing this as always. And we'll touch base before the weekend for some final picks. But I'm with you. I think I'm getting on the Argos right now in that one. And we'll see who's right about the West Final because I'm contractually obligated to be pulling for the Bombers.
As you should.
Take them at home. Absolutely.
Well, it comes to, like, to me, that game, whose running backs are going to show up a little bit more? Is it going to be Brady or is it going to be Rock and Ouellette? And right off the bat, to me, I don't care that there's two at the Riders. The edge does go to Brady in that one because he's just so damn good.
Yeah, I mean, to me, listen, I think this is going to be a pretty simple one. Tell me after the game who won the turnover battle, and I think we'll probably be talking about the team that wins. Special teams huge. I mean, if one kicker has a bad day, obviously that could be, but I think this is going to be real close. 4.5, 3.5, 2.5, whatever. I mean, I think you kind of bet the team that you think is going to win. But it wouldn't. I think the biggest surprise in this game would be if it's not close. Going to be a great Saturday. Looking forward to it. We'll have more on the National Football League, the Canadian Football League, of course, the NHL. We'll get that partner parlay up in the exclusives. Check the WST parlay and Maddie, I got to run over to WST. I'll throw it back to you and the fellas for a great afternoon on Edmonton Sports Talk. Great chopping it up with you, buddy.
Great seeing you. Have a good one on WST. 2 Guys in Goalie coming up here on EST.